items. We do have a fun-filled agenda, so we'll get started. As always, we'll record the session and then I'll share it out through the contact list that I have. And our first item up on the agenda today is going to be the procedural safeguards. And so with that, I just wanted to, I shared this out at the LEA call, but for those of you that weren't on that call, I wanted to share this information out again. So there's templates available for, of course, English, Spanish, and Chinese. I have gotten some other additional ones that I'm working on changing out and putting in there, and then looking at getting more procedural safeguards translated into those 6 languages that we have in EdPlan SC. And where those are available are down in the resource information widget. They're there under procedural safeguards. And then you would just be able to put your, the front page would be your district information on there. And there might be some things you want to change in the back. There's like a list of agencies to contact. And so if you have local agencies, you'll want to include those. And I think Peter mentioned yesterday to me that there's some other links and things that within the template that the districts would need to change. So still working on that project, but that tab is there in the training site. And so we are working on cleaning up the training site. We've uploaded some new files and have kind of alphabetized the tabs and cleaned out some pieces. And so with that, once we get the training site exactly how I think it should be, then we'll move into the production site to make sure that that mirrors that those tabs. And then with that, I also wanted to share out, and I shared this out through an email, and then I shared it out again on the LEA call, but we are doing an initial power user training. I say initial because it will be, what some of you already partaked in back in last year. I can't believe it's already been over a year now that we did the power user training at the public charter school district. So back in February, March timeframe. So it will be that same format, that same agenda, pretty much going through that. So it's great for maybe there's a change in your district where you're adding a power user, or teachers moving up to a coordinator position, and you're having them become a power user and you want them to attend. If you have any questions about it, reach out to me and let me know. I know I've had some questions of, I'm currently a power user, I've kind of trained myself, or I've been attending everything. I'm not sure I need initial, should I come? And so we can talk about how that's going to look and whether you want, to attend. So that is available to you as part of that. If you have any questions, like I said, just let me know. The next piece of the agenda for today is the single sign-on. And with the single sign-on, I just wanted to give an update. We're having districts go live on Tuesdays with single sign-on. And so if you have received an email from me about single sign-on, and maybe the district hasn't responded or is like, we're not using single sign-on right now, just let me know where you are at with moving forward with that. It's not every district. It is, I think the last check that we had, or the initial, was it's almost like half of the districts are using ClassLink. But from that list, when we drilled down, some districts were using it, but for just random things. They weren't using it for all their applications, while other districts were using it for everything. And so if you want to get into ClassLink, let me know. Again, Oconee tested that for us. The testing went really great. They had a lot of good feedback. So I was trying to make it as clean as possible, as smooth of a transition for districts as possible to move into ClassLink, from putting announcements on your dashboard to making sure the district was ready. So if you have any questions about it, or if you said, hey, is there a district that would be willing to share how it went, I can pass that information on to you if you have any questions about how single sign-on works. But that single sign-on for those users that come over in the state data feed, it changes their way to access EdPlan would be through ClassLink and no longer having to use like that multi-factor authentication, that MFA, where they're getting the text message or the email. Okay. And I'm going to turn it over to the next item. Is Nick. He's going to share with us some updates on some known system issues.
Thanks, Katie. There are two outstanding items that are being addressed in the system now. Some of you have already opened Zendesk tickets for these, but if you have not experienced it, we want to address it with the full group. One item that's happening relates to the IEP begin and end dates with respect to the goal begin and end dates. There's a condition in the system right now where if a user saves their goal dates, the checks happen. It checks to make sure the begin date is after the IEP begin date or on it, and that the end date of the goal doesn't go beyond the end date. But then if that goal date is edited and the user continues forward, it's not catching that edit mistake. So there's a fix in place to make sure that if a goal date has been added and then edited, and the edit placed the date outside of the IEP dates, that error will be caught. So it's a pretty small edge case, but it has come up a few times. Second item relates to translation and translation of the IEP. Specifically, if the IEP was being translated into Spanish, we were seeing in some cases extra forms for like a transition age student were automatically attaching to the back end of that translated version, not the English version, but the translated version. That will be addressed tonight. So starting tomorrow, that error will no longer occur. I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions, thoughts, considerations.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat other than, Laura said, it's been great for us. That's good to hear. So SSO, I will say the feedback has been really positive regarding SSO. So that's great. I'm glad to hear, like I said, this kept Nick and I up at night. Every Monday night, I was like, oh, please, 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 please just go smoothly. And it has. And so I want to thank Nick for all his hard work with that part. And so those are great updates with the known system issues. If you have any questions about that, let us know. We appreciate everyone that fills out tickets and notifies us right away that there's an issue, because that helps us get that fixed right away and get that started. So hopefully there's not as much impact to other districts and other users. And I know this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Nick is going to take us through the April release changes. I think we're going to have some happy users, maybe. Again, we use all of your feedback, whether it's through that link or through the tickets that we're seeing, to make these changes. And so moving forward, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, you bet. And I believe, Katie, this document I'm sharing, the release notes, this was just sent out to power users. Is that right?
Yes, I sent it yesterday.
Okay.
At some
Awesome.
point. Yeah. So they
the documents,
yeah, they have it.
Awesome. So the documents I'm going to walk through, you all should have in your email inboxes to reference as well. So if you forget anything or anything I say isn't clear, please ask me a question in the chat. I'll be able to see it off to the side. So some of these changes are quite small. Formatting changes, some of them are much larger. So I'll go kind of quicker through the formatting changes. I'll spend a bit more time discussing the more substantial ones. So the first change relates to consent to evaluate in both initial and reevaluation. Previously, the question when you were logging an attempt was signed parent consent received? And now that question just asks if parent consent was received to accommodate situations where it might not be signed, especially in a reevaluation. So that question has just been genericized to not be asking specifically about signed consent, rather just consent received. Moving down to the next change, also relates to language. There are places where we've updated the roles in the eligibility determination so that the role titles match across all processes. So you see the role currently, it just says LEA. It will now say LEA representative to match other parts in the system. And in the eligibility determination, it used to just ask for a special education teacher. That's now been broadened to say special education teacher or provider. So those roles will now match in other places. All right, one of the bigger changes. So this will be kind of easy to understand visually and much easier to understand when you see it in practice, but it relates to the consent for initial provision of services for a student. Up until this point in the system, this was tied to the prior written notice document. So if a student did not have consent for initial provision of services logged in the system. When you generate the prior written notice, there were those three options that would ask you at the very bottom on initial placement only, is this to include the consent for initial provision of services? So it used to be tied to the prior written notice. In this release, we've updated that so that now when you go to the consent for initial provision of services tile in the initial eligibility process, you're going to have the ability to create a standalone consent for initial provision of services document from that tile. So you could make the eligibility determination, go to the next tile, which is consent for initial provision of services, and you can generate that document from that tile rather than having to generate it combined with the PWN. Also, as a part of this is you can generate a standalone consent for initial provision of services from the documents page. It'll be listed underneath the consent form section. It'll be called consent for initial provision of services. And the only prompt you'll have is to enter the date sent for that consent for initial provision of services. The big difference here is it's no longer connected to the PWN. It is a standalone consent for initial provision of services document. I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions about that.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Okay, I'll keep moving down, and if we
the
get some
Q&A.
as I go, I'll come back up. Sounds good.
Thanks, Nick.
So that's, yeah, you bet. That tile I was referencing is right here. So now you'll generate the consent for provision of services from the tile rather than having to generate it from the PWN. Another language change on the special consideration section of the IEP. Currently in the system, language acquisition concerns for students are listed under the term ILAP, Individualized Language Acquisition Plan. That category is now being changed to be titled Limited English Proficiency. So centered around the condition, not the plan that might result from that condition. And then when the document prints, it will no longer be printing saying that the ILAP or the IHP are attached. It will just print that you said yes. So if the document is attached, fantastic, but it no longer will say that it is attached. Questions there? Okay. Moving down to the team excusal form. So right now inside of the IEP process, you can select a member for a role, you can check that they need to be excused, and you can generate an IEP specific excusal form. But that form said things about IEP team or the IEP. The change for this month is there's going to be a new document just called the team member excusal form. And this is a generic document so that it won't be specific to the IEP meeting. Instead, it'll be specific or it'll be generic for any sort of meeting. So previously in the IEP team excusal, the document said IEP, and you were asked about the area of curriculum or related service that was covered. In this new document, you'll be able to list a team member and then just type the area that they would be covering for any type of meeting, rather than only for an IEP meeting. In the document, you'll see the differences here, where it's not going to be IEP specific. It will just say at the meeting rather than discussing an IEP meeting specifically. The same document, same function, but more generic to be able to apply to an eligibility determination or to an MDR, any sort of meeting. Okay. Next item is the manifestation determination review. There's a small change you'll notice in the interface, and then the larger change will be the reports that can be pulled after this change. So right now, when you make an MDR document that is not registered in the student's history as an event, it will print the fields and it'll create a PDF for you, but it won't save all of those fields for reporting. So what you see now is when you create an MDR document after this release, it will also create an event. And then that means these fields will be available for reporting. So you won't just be able to say that an MDR happened, you'd be able to report on what happened inside of that MDR. Right now you can say, did a student have an MDR? After this change, you'll be able to answer who attended that meeting and what was discussed in a report. Okay. Moving down, another smaller change with the header. This was meant to address instances where students might share first and last names, or the header just doesn't fully identify them. What we've done here is change the first and last name section of the header to just be a full name section, to also include the suffix if the student has something like junior after their name or the third after their name. And then we've reorganized the header to be a bit more symmetrical. So we collapsed the name and reorganized it. Okay. And then that brings us to the configuration updates, Katie. I can run through these two, but I know these have already gone out a bit earlier. So
Yeah, we're good with, there's just one item that's been changed. If you scroll to the bottom of this and put it on here. So I had sent these out, but then we decided to go ahead and include them with this, because then if you're sending them to your end users, you're just sending one document. The only change that is different between what I sent you, I believe, last week with those configuration changes is this. And we had the request, and I worked with Marty to add orientation and mobility in that consent form. So you'll see that. And then he was able to provide me with some common assessments that were used. So anyone that's familiar with that or has users that want to look at that information, if you have other assessments that you are using and you want those added, you can send those to me. And then we can look at them. I'll have Marty, review them, and then we can add them. There is always that custom field that you can use. But again, I like to, put those in there. So that is the only change from the configurations that were sent out previously. And so just again, to reiterate how those configuration changes happen. So there's configuration changes, there's development changes, and then there's also what we would call like a defect. And so configuration changes are typically drop downs. When I look at a drop down, I can make a change to it. Some of those information boxes are configurable, and those usually happen, on a Friday. Nick and his team will put those in, and then you'll see that reflected on Saturday if you're working, but on Monday morning when you're back in the office. And then development changes, those are the ones like that come with the release notes that take a long time. We've just approved the development for October. So what's being released in October actually just ran through development, and we decided what we were doing. We're in the middle of testing. We'll be testing the next changes for the August release. So those take a lot longer. Those are what I like to refer to as time and money. So those are different. And then you have defects where I always describe it like Wreck-It Ralph, like that kid's the movie, where it's technology, and one little thing just goes haywire inside it, and the developers have to go back in and make a fix. Maybe there's a little error, so like they made a change and maybe they mistyped a word, or there's an extra space now, and so those are kind of like defects, and those are like what those common known issues were that Nick went over. We find those randomly, and then based on like the tickets. Like if we get more than a few tickets, then we look at it as, okay, there's a defect that we need to work on fixing. So just to kind of give some more information about how that works, because I know it took a lot for me to wrap my head around how all that works with the configuration changes, development changes. And so just kind of for you to have a better understanding of that piece. So that O&M was part of configuration changes that we were able to make that were made a little more quickly. The next thing that we have to cover is the exit notice. And for the exit notice, we're talking about the exit notice that is in EdPlan under my documents. So I'm going to open my screen or share my screen. And here I've been getting a lot of questions about these reasons, that there's not sufficient exit reasons for this. And so what we need to think about is these exit reasons are different than like the federal reporting exit reasons and the exit reasons in PowerSchool. These exit reasons are tied to us providing the exit notice for the family. So what we're saying with this exit notice is you are leaving. okay? And you are leaving because of these reasons. You're either graduating with a high school diploma, you've completed that GED, you know, the employability credential, or you've reached maximum age. So some of the questions that I received were, you know, I have an 18-year-old student. He's wants to leave when his peers leave. He's not going to be coming back, and there's no option for here for that student. And so that is because you're not saying that they're leaving. You're not notifying them that they're going to be leaving after this year. They're notifying you. And so for that, you wouldn't have that exit notice. What you would want to do is heavily document that in the PWN. So I just wanted to provide some clarity on this. I went back and forth with some people in OSIS to make sure I had all the right information that I needed. I met with a few districts, you know, virtually to kind of go over this. So this form, this document is not what we're talking about when it relates to like Carolyn's federal reporting for exit notices, and those exit notices that you're putting in for PowerSchool. This is when you are notifying the family and the student that you're getting ready to leave, and we're preparing you for that. It's so they can't say, I didn't know that this was my last year. Okay. Any questions on that? You guys are really quiet today. I don't know if all of the vocal districts are out on spring break, maybe, or if this is just so good that you have no questions because we're so clear, right? Maybe that's what it is. So we're going to move on to our next item in the agenda for today, and that is the exit report. And so Nick's kind of going to talk about that for us. Again, I thought it would be good to pair exit notice with exit report so we can understand there's a difference between the two things.
Yeah, definitely. And do you want to cover how to modify the exit reason, and then I'll come in and do the report after that? I think that makes the most sense.
I'm sorry, I was talking with my mic muted again. I apologize, everybody. So let me just share my screen. So if a student has left your district, you have the option of entering a modified exit reason. To do that, you're going to go to admin actions again, inactive students, and you're going to look for that student. And when you open that student, it will give you the choice of adding a modified exit reason. And then you're going to choose that modified exit reason. So this student transferred to another school system. So I'm going to update that, and that will save that modified exit reason. These are the exit reasons available here are the exit reasons that are allowed on that federal exit report. So there might be detailed reasons why the student left from a school system. Maybe they went to be homeschooled. Maybe they went to whatever happened. The report that's submitted wants one of these reasons. So it's not interested in the details. It just wants one of these reasons. And that's how you'll do it. Do you all want me to show you how to get there again?
Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to here. If I go to admin actions, and then it's going to ask me to choose admin actions again, but this time that has this little arrow, and you'll see inactive students. And that student will come up, and it will say modified exit reason here. And you will choose that. If a student did not have special education, it won't give you this choice of modified exit reason. Just so if you go in to every kid, you won't get that choice if it wasn't a special education student. If it was a special education student and you don't have the choice to enter a modified exit reason, you want to submit a Zendesk ticket, and we'll look to see what circumstance. Yeah. Oh, look at that. You already asked the question. I don't have the option to modify. That's if you have a student who is special education that does not give you the option to modify, please put in that Zendesk ticket and we'll look at why that's happening. It might have been in the order of which the student was made inactive. There's a whole bunch of different factors that may play into it. So just submit that ticket and we'll try to figure it out.
And I think for Karen's question, Nick, we had said, we're going to show you how to do it. And I think Carolyn, we're meeting again Monday. Carolyn's going to be giving you the information on when to do it. So, normally we would like to show you like how after she says when, but because the office hours fell when it did, I wanted to make sure you knew what to do when she tells you who to do that to. Does that make sense? So, and with the option to modify is, I think, Nick or Ann, what user type is that? Is that just a power user?
That
Do you
is
remember what
just a
level?
power user.
So Brooke, I'm pretty sure you are a power user, but I just wanted to make sure, is it that you can't modify anyone or you just can't modify one specific person? Because if they can't modify anyone, I'm guessing maybe it's their user type versus if it's just one or two students, then it's something like the path to get there is wrong and they need to submit a ticket.
Yeah, I think, and if you can pull up one of the quickest ways to tell, and Brooke, I'm not sure without looking at your student if this fits, but can you go to the student history, Anne? If you
Yes.
click back on A, yeah, there you go. Perfect. Okay.
And then
So
I
if you
have
go-
to do student history. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah. So the way the system knows that the student might need to have their exit reason modified is if they had a special education association when they exited. So for Anne's student, this will be a test student. It'll be a little harder to grasp. But if she scrolls way back down, at some point in the student's history, there was an IEP. So that student had an IEP running from 11/19 to 11/18. And then if Anne scrolls back up, the exit event happened on 4/24, which is in between those IEP dates. So the system knows the student was being served when they exited, and that means it gives you the option to modify that student's reason. If the student exited without an IEP at the point of exit, you won't see that option. So that's my best bet, Brooke, on what you're experiencing. But if you could submit a ticket, we can help follow that one through.
Yeah, and I was just responding. I do see her as a power user in the system, so her user type is correct. So if she can submit a ticket and then we can work through that.
Sounds good.
Okay. And so we have a question. Who do we need to modify the exit reason for? So that's that question about the exit report. Do they have to put in that modified exit reason for everyone or for specific students? And I think that you were talked about maybe Caroline updating them
Right.
with what she expects.
Right. So there's another meeting on Monday to look at that. I think Nick's going to run through this with her, and then she'll be putting out that information as like, that's a piece I said, Anne, about like, we're showing you how to do it so that you're prepared as to know how to do it when Carolyn tells you who to do that, like who would need that done for.
Excuse me. All
And
right.
Nick's going to talk about the reporting part of it now.
Yeah, there's not much in addition to show, but I will have Anne. Oh, do you have AR up, Anne? Sorry,
I can put AR up.
Okay.
It's going to be
and-
training site AR, so I won't be pulling any kids.
Yeah, that's okay. There's a report inside of advanced reporting to just help you look at which students have a modified exit reason set. I actually don't think this will work for you, Anne. Oh, I did. Cool.
Oh yeah, I can get here. I just, when I run the report, no one pulls up.
Okay, cool. So can you go into the folders? And then as one of the shared reports, we're going to be coming back here later. But there is an AR report already built to help see these students. So if you click that and then click student exit.
I went there pretty quickly and I'm sorry, everyone. Does everyone know how I got here? Okay, I don't see anyone saying that they want me to repeat. Okay. So we're here on student exit.
And then like Ann said, we won't get any information here. Hopefully it gives the headers. That's my hope.
Mhm.
So you choose a begin and end date for the range in which you want to search for students. Perfect. And then you'd hit run. Okay, awesome. So your report will be populated with much information, all students who exited between those dates. And then the exit reason and the exit reason code, those two columns almost all the way to the right, are the two that come from PowerSchool. And then if a student has a modified reason set, it would be that third and final column.
So this is usually like W2 or that's the dropout one. I knew that one pretty well from and so that will give you what the code is from PowerSchool. And then this is what you enter in as a different reason. Are we good with that?
Nothing else from
Once
you?
again, do we need to have a modified reason for our SPED students? That's going to come out. Carolyn's going to explain that more. I think you said Monday, correct, Katie?
Yeah, well,
Well,
Nick, Carolyn, yeah, we're meeting on Monday and then from there, she'll push out information about that. So it won't be Monday that she'll probably push the information out because our meetings are late afternoon. But I would anticipate that next week and I'll follow up with Carolyn. So she knows that we're saying that she's gonna be pushing something out. But this
And
is,
some
like I
of
said, this
those-
is just the how, yeah.
Yeah, and some reasons to give kind of to what we're discussing, like deceased is a reason we get from PowerSchool and one that is in the list for federal reasons. In cases like that, there's no need to modify. So we'll push out guidance for each reason. Okay.
I would probably wait to get information. Yeah.
Yeah, again, this,
Mhm.
I thought it would be easier to show how to do it. So that you know when you are needing to do it, how to do it. And it would be too late to do it next office hours come May. So, and I thought it would be best done through this, so you can, there was a video of how to do it that you can go back to if you need to do it. Versus me trying to put screenshots in an email.
All right, Katie, do you want me to go on to the how to add the ESY school?
Yep, and that's the next item. So go ahead and move on to that, Dan, thank you.
So I'm going to find my student. And in here, I want to go to his personal information page. And where you can add next school. I can choose the school that student's going to be going to ESY. And it will allow me to select that as ESY school. And then I can put the end date of ESY in here. And why the benefit of that is that at that date, at that end date I put in, that school stops having access to that student. So the teachers, when you add the next school, please remember when you add that next school for ESY, the teachers at that school now have access to that student and that student's records. But they cease to have access on that ESY end date. Okay. So I'm going to go to my student. Here. And once I'm in my student, I'm going to go to the student's student info, personal information. And on this personal information page, I will go to edit next school. And I will choose the school that I want the student to go to for ESY. So I'm just choosing a virtual environment and I'm choosing ESY school. And then I can enter that ESY end date. So I just entered a random date. I know that that's not correct, but the ESY end date, and then I hit next, and then I save. So now I see the student has the next school that had been entered because that's the school he's going to next year. And then I also have the virtual environment because that's where he is going to be going to ESY. And then you put that ESY end date in to stop that school's access to that student. Just a question. If ESY is in the same school, no, and correct me if I'm wrong, if the ESY is at the same school, you would not need to do this. The reason you're doing this is to give that school access to this student so they can deliver the ESY services.
And can we show the same thing from the user perspective? How you can set an ESY association for a user as well.
Okay.
I can talk through the clicks. So if you go to
That's,
admins,
I'm
search
guessing go
users.
to admin users.
So what I'm gonna have Anne show is she pulls up any user. You can do a similar function, but for a staff member. So what Anne just did, expanded the school access for that kid. Said this student should, until this day, should be associated with this school. And you can do the same thing with an individual or a staff member. So when Anne opens up this user, we're going to see the school associations we always see when you scroll further down. That's the
This
training
should be a
site, so it's
long
going to
list.
look, yeah.
Yeah.
So you would see just one list of schools and one manage ESY schools button. Because we're in the training site, you'll see many. But now this option gives Anne the ability to do the same thing she did for the student, but for a staff member. So she can say, I want Anne Test to have access to those two schools for ESY. And let's say on the first one, it'll end on August 1st. And the second one might end on August 15th. And this has the same function as the student. So when Anne hits save and return, it scrolls back down. Inside of that manage ESY schools button, you'd see that she's now associated with 2 ESY schools. And then on those dates, that association ends. Okay, I see a request to do it again for the staff. So Anne, can you go back to like the main menu, click on the logo? So just like you'd get to any other user management, you'd go to admin, and then you'd click the search users sub item. Here you can use the filters or use a staff member's name. Once you're there, you click on the staff member you want to work with. And this is where you have to stretch your imagine just a little because we're on the training site. And when you scroll down, in your site, this will be one list of all your schools and one button that says Manage ESY Schools. You would press that one button. And then you would get a list of all schools that you could get access to. So you enter the user profile, select Manage ESY Schools, and then you'll get this menu.
And this end date is the date the user no longer will have access to that school.
think I'm seeing.
So you
anything
don't
else
have to
in
go
chat.
in and out and remove them from schools. It will just do it for you.
I think that, let me know in the chat if that was helpful on the second run through for users, or if we need to show anything else again.
I think that's good.
I'll make sure there's a Zendesk article on that. And if there's not, I will create one. So you have that to refer to in the future if you don't remember all the things that we're telling you.
All right, and that's going to move us over to the transfer student parent information, Anne, that you're covering.
All right. So with EdPlan Connect, there's that little box that you check for a parent. Let me show you recent students. Bless my poor William, he's been through it, let me tell you. So if you go into family and others and you look at details for a family member, this box here may or may not be selected as that EdPlan South Carolina Connect contact. If it's selected, you don't necessarily want this information to transfer with the student if they're leaving. So, or if a student's coming to you, you don't want to pull that information in. There are numerous reasons why a student may be changing schools. So you
And can you
don't
make the
want
screen
to,
bigger? Sorry,
yeah,
we just
you
had a
don't
request to make it bigger.
necessarily want this parent to transfer in as the Connect contact. So when you asked for transfer of records, sorry, my tongue was getting tied. When you go to admin actions again, student transfer, and you request that transfer, find a district here. The demo site. So I have my student I want to request the records for. Then I go down and request the student transfer. And then here, please indicate which data should be transferred. You want to deselect parents. The most current parent information is going to pull in from PowerSchool. So you don't need the parent information to come in with the student's records. It will come in from PowerSchool. So you want to make sure to deselect parents. If you select parents, the parents from the previous district will pull in with that EdPlan Connect selected, and that is not necessarily what you would want to have happen. Any questions about that when transferring students? All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna drop in the chat how that came out. This is something that I'll be emailing you as well. We're moving on to this transportation now I'm getting tongue-tied. Request type directions. And so let me share my screen. And where I am at in EdPlan is the transportation form. And so when you go into the transportation form, and I think we talked about this on maybe the last office hours just for a few minutes, but this request type. And so when you go to this request type, you're basically including the information as to why you are making this request. And is it because there's been an annual IEP? Is it a new school year? And so the feedback that we had gotten was we had a couple districts reach out and say, I'm not sure what you mean by this, or can we make this a little more clear? And the wording was confusing. And so I know one of the districts pointed out, like, it used to say new request. And so, well, every time you make a request, it's a new request. And so we've changed new request to initial request. And after we met this morning, I was like, I think these changes are happening tonight for tomorrow. Or is that possibly happening? Are we going to pull those out for the first? Do you remember what Shannon had said or Shannon on?
Let me look at the
I'm on.
notes.
Okay.
I'm on. We were going to do those tonight.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then I was like, wait, so much happening. All right. So tonight these changes will be made. So tomorrow morning, you will see all the new ones, new options in there. And then there's this nice description box that goes along with what each of those means. So I will send this document out in an email. I dropped it in the chat just so you could refer to it while I was going through it. And that is for this box here. I would share that with your, with your transportation departments. Then they're on the same page as when they get it. I mean, some of it is self-explanatory. An address change, well, the address changed. But some of the other ones may not be as, as clear. So anything we can do to make things clearer, we will do that. So, any questions about that those descriptions? Okay, and I appreciate Kelly and Lindy from Dillon 3 and Ori jumping in there to say, hey, can we make this a little bit more clear? Again, everything you say to me, I process at some point. So, and we use all of that feedback to make changes. So we're going to move into federal reporting. Nick's going to just have, I think it's an update about 7, 11, and 12. And so I'll take it away, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So I have some general notes on indicators 7, 11, and 12. If you participated in the systemic verification checks, you're probably aware of the things I'm about to share because we've solved these together with you in tickets. Some of them we're still working on. There's a few items that relate to how data migrated from the previous system that impacts how the data is pulling on the reports. So all the items I'm addressing are things that are in process of being changed. But if you're running your data now, you might see these things. So I want to make sure we say them to the full group. The first thing relates to students with a grade of P3. We have identified the issue that's causing students who should be labeled as pre-K3 or preschool -2 to be labeled incorrectly as P3. That will be updated tomorrow night. So students that are currently labeled P3 will show up as preschool -2 in parentheses, and the abbreviation will be pre-K3, PK3. So I know a lot of folks saw this when they're working through their data. That's something that will be adjusted. For indicator 7, there are students who are age 3 to 5 who have an entry only. So these aren't students that have had an entry and an exit. These aren't the 6-year-olds, but these are the students who are ages 3 to 5 who only have an entry. If you're running your report now, you'll be seeing students between age 3 and 5 with an entry made inside of EdPlan, but the report is not recognizing students with an entry only that came from Enrich. The data is still transferred to those students' profiles. So as I'm saying this, if you are thinking of a 4-year-old, you want to go check. In their student history, there will be a COSIF entry event, but the way the report is reading that event versus EdPlan created events is different. So if you're not seeing very many 4-year-olds in your output, that is something that is being addressed. And it's because their document wasn't made in EdPlan, their event transferred. All right, I'm going to watch the chat at the end. I'm probably going to just go through 11 and 12, and then Katie or Ann, if we get anything, let me know.
Okay, sounds good.
On indicator 11, the most common feedback we've received, and you might have seen it if you've run your data, is it looks like re-eval students are appearing in your report. You'll see a student maybe in 6th grade, and they're pulling up in your indicator 11 like they're an initial, and that of course does not make sense. What's happening there is EdPlan is measuring between the parent consent date event, which migrated from Enrich, and the evaluation completion event, which we did not receive migrated from Enrich. So if a student has been evaluated since July 8th, they have that evaluation completion event because some staff member in your district pressed confirm evaluation completion date. The report is seeing students who got consent in Enrich, let's say maybe in 2019, and we received their eligibility determination, but we never received the date that their evaluation was completed. And the report starts the clock when it sees the consent, and it stops the clock when it sees the eval completion. Because those eval completions were not migrated, the clock was never stopped on these students in the report. If you look at their profile, they're in compliance, all their timelines look standard, but they're likely pulling into your indicator 11 output, and it looks like they're getting reevaluation students. This is being fixed, and there's going to be a back date put in the report so that all of these students who received consent in previous years and enrich are not pulling into this year's report. But if you're seeing students that look like they're in the midst of a reeval in indicator 11, that is the cause. It's the missing eval completion date from the data migration. Once this is fixed, there'll be no manual action to take. The report will just know, don't look at those kids who had their consent way back in the 2015. All right, and then the third item, still not seeing any questions in the chat. Please ask them if you have them, is indicator 12. And on indicator 12, the report is going to pull in any student who was active for at least one day in your LEA this year and who turned 3 during the reporting year. The reporting year is measured from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. So if they're active for one day and they turned 3, they will pull into that output. There is a checkbox when you're creating the indicator 12 report. I'm going to put this in the chat. It is called exclude blank BabyNet referral dates. It's one of your options you can check. What the report does to identify students that were referred via BabyNet is it looks for that date. So a lot of the feedback we're getting in tickets says, why are my child find students appearing on indicator 12? The reason would be if you had checked this box that said exclude blank BabyNet referral dates, that is only going to report the students that have a referral date. If you leave this box unchecked, it would pull in any 3-year-old, regardless of whether or not they had the referral date on their BabyNet page. So the reason we recommend running this with the box unchecked, so not checking exclude BabyNet referrals, is so you can find students who might be missing one. If there's a student that's showing up on your report and you think they should have a BabyNet referral date and it's missing, unchecking that box allows you to see that. If you check that box, it's only going to pull those students who have a BabyNet referral, which in the end are those students you want to report. But when we're doing the checking before the final report, that box was unchecked so that you could see those students who might have been missing a BabyNet referral. And do you still have EdPlan up? I know I'm calling you off of order.
I do still have that plan up.
Okay. Can you pull up a student and go to their BabyNet page? I just want to make sure I drive this one home because I think this is the most confusing condition.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So first, Anne, can you actually go to reporting and pull up the indicator 12 report? Sorry, I'm bouncing around on you.
That's all right, I'm used to that.
All right, under special ed, state and federal, and then 12. And then can you zoom in so we can see that exclude blank BabyNet referral dates box? Right there, the third one. So if this box is checked, so Anne, can you check it for a visual? So when this box is checked, that means when you press run, the Excel you get out will only include students that have a BabyNet referral date. So they'll be 3 years old and they have a referral date. If Anne unchecks the box, this means all 3-year-olds who are active in your LEA will pull in. It means you'll have students identified via child find and referred via BabyNet. And when I say BabyNet referral date, and can you pull up a student profile? And then underneath student info, there's the BabyNet menu item. Sorry, Anne, the BabyNet drop-down item, my fault. If you go back
Okay.
to student info.
Because it's down here, right?
Yeah,
There we
it's,
go.
there you go. So then if you scroll to that notification date, it's gonna be pulling the date off of this page. So if a student is showing up in your report and you don't expect them to be there, that's most likely because that box was unchecked. That exclude blank BabyNet referral dates box was unchecked. Are there any questions about that? Great question, Karen. So if this page is blank, this is a good example. William Lowe has no information about a BabyNet referral. And let's imagine William Lowe is turning 3. I know he's not actually turning 3. But if this page is blank, and then you go back to the report, indicator 12. If you check that third box, exclude blank BabyNet referrals, William Lowe would not have showed up because William Lowe did not have a date. If you uncheck the box, it removes that condition. Now it's just going to give you all 3-year-olds who are active for at least 1 day. The reason we recommended at first to not check that box is so that you can see all students in case a BabyNet referral date was missing. A student who genuinely was referred via BabyNet did not have that date entered because of a mistake or an error. But when you check the box, that will make sure that that is only the students that have a BabyNet referral date in the system today. Karen, let me know if that helped address your question, or anyone else, if you have questions like that. The user didn't enter. I see what you're asking, Karen. I do not think I'm the person to answer. So I can make sure we discuss with Carolyn Bostic and team to get you an answer back to that. All right. Cool. I think that is all I have for that item. 7, 11, and 12.
All right, and so we're going to move on to our next item after federal reporting, and it is progress reports, and it's a review of the review of reporting periods. Nick.
All right, awesome. And I will steal the screen share back from you. I see a question from Hattie. I think, Katie, this probably leans more towards your world. If the BabyNet referral form there's no date on the form.
Nick, it's Sherry. I'm here.
Oh,
If
sorry.
there is not a date on the BabyNet referral form, you can just consider the date you received it is the date that that the referral came in.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm briefly going to talk about reporting periods, and this is mostly just the setup for what we're going to discuss, I think, in 2 agenda items. We have a very full agenda today. This is a good one. We're next year with reporting periods. We're going to talk about the planned approach and how it differs from what the approach was this year. So this year for reporting periods, when the system launched on July 8th, we had imported from PowerSchool report periods, and those report periods controlled when you could make a progress report. They had begin dates and end dates, and if the goals for a given IEP weren't inside of those begin or end dates, there are a lot of difficulties in generating the report. I'm sure you all experienced them where if the dates are misaligned, the report would print with no data. You'd have to submit a ticket. We'd have to work through that, and then the report would pull the data. So for next year, the current plan is to not import those reporting period dates from PowerSchool, which means you would have the opportunity to set your reporting periods at the district level, and that would automatically apply to every school in your system. If you wanted to then go manually set different reporting periods school by school, you can still do that, and they would still be observed by the system. The difference for next year is we're not planning to bring in those reporting periods from PowerSchool, because then if they were wrong, you had to go to each school and reset them to be in sync with the district. Instead, next year, the plan is to leave them blank. They'll be set up manually by a power user, and that will automatically apply to all schools, rather than you having to reset custom periods to sync back up with the district calendar. The takeaway here is there'll be one setup step when the system turns over school years in July, but it should greatly reduce the difficulties in generating progress reports throughout the year. Are there any questions on that? Okay. I know we're going to be doing a big end of year rollover at our next office hour, so I think we'll have a good amount of detail there. But we wanted to make sure everyone knew the difficulties with report periods. A lot of them were due to the import we did to set up the system. Moving forward next year, we are not going to be doing that import. All right.
All right, and so we're gonna move to our next one, and it's the paperclip. It's that checking that allotment and usage.
Yeah,
And so Nick's gonna cover that for us. It's
you bet.
I'm still in,
Sure.
Nick, if you need me to.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you have the training site? Awesome. Okay. So what we're going to be showing here is a way that you can manually check your progress towards the paperclip allocation. We know there can be difficulties in where you reach that allocation and you only know you reached it when you hit it. Someone tells you, I can't upload a new document. I've already reached my allocation. So a way you can check that as a power user is through the admin menu. If you go to admin actions, this will load up a page that gives you a quick summary, but if you go to the left and click on summary. Oh, sorry, system info.
System
my
info.
apologies.
I was pointing right at it.
You were. I
I
was
was
on the
like,
wrong one.
system info right here. I'm just
There you
joking.
go. Okay, so the key fields here at the very bottom. The top one says uploaded documents quota, and the bottom one says bytes uploaded this year. The numbers outside of the parentheses aren't that useful. It's measuring them in bytes, which is kind of an esoteric measurement. But inside of the parentheses should be more understandable numbers. So the top number is the training site quota for the year, 95 megabytes. The bottom number is how many megabytes have been uploaded this year, 66. And then to the right is a percentage of how much has been used. So on the training site, we've used 69% of the total quota. So as that number gets closer up towards 95.737, that's what would shut off uploadability. So if that number reaches 100, that means the paperclip cap has been reached. And I'll pass to Katie to speak of what to do in that instance.
contact me. Their PCG is going to be sharing a report with me on Monday that'll help me look at who's nearing that. And then I will reach out to you, and then they're working on an AR report so that I'll be able to do that more consistently throughout the school year. And so if you are nearing that, if you Nick just showed you how to get there and you're in your system and you get in there and you're like, oh, I'm at 99%, please email me and we will work something out. So I did hold back some paperclip this year so we could see where we were at. There is a guide for paperclip that talks about like you know how things should be put in there and easier, like I don't want to say easier, but with less where it takes up less space. And so there is information about that. There is information where you could run the report because you might find that you have 2 or 3 users that are just uploading everything but the kitchen sink, and maybe they shouldn't be doing that. So you know, we've had districts before that they were uploading the entire IEP with the signature pages. And so really you just need to upload the signature page. You don't need to upload the whole IEP again. That's already there for you in the system. So any questions about paperclip, let me know. Is there anything in the chat I just saw? How is it free? Oh, the free calculator. Do you want to talk about that, Nick?
Yeah, I can speak to this.
And
Can
this
you-
next year won't be as confusing. This year it's confusing because it had to be included in there because you used it, but it didn't take away from that allocation that you were given.
Yeah, and can you reshare the training site on right where you were before? This is a good question, Anna. Okay. So let's imagine today was September 30th. Like, I think that was the last day of the free period. I'm gonna look to Katie to see if I'm accurate. Is it September 30th?
Yes, September
Okay.
30th was the last day.
Okay. So imagining this was September 30th and this was how much was uploaded in that free period. So Anne has uploaded 66 megabytes so far. And let's say the original allocation that Anne's district was given was 95. So on September 30th, we looked at exactly how much had been uploaded in the free period, and we re-added your allocation on top of this. So if Anne was given 95 megabytes by the state and she had uploaded 66 megabytes in the free period, on October 1st, we added the 2 numbers. So we took 66 and added it to 95, and Anne's cap would have gone from 95 up to, let's see how fast my math is, 161. Because we couldn't subtract you back down to 0, but we re-added your cap so that your cap was reset on October 1st. But your percentage never went to 0 because we added more rather than taking away what you had already done. Katie, Anne, is that well explained? Anna, let me know if that landed. As Katie said, it's a first year thing. Starting in July 1st, 2025, you'll have one number till the next June.
And
Yeah.
so that reallocation will happen July 1. So with that, well, I should say on or near July 1. I don't know if it's really happening. I don't even know what July 1st is. So, but that's the date that we're shooting for. And so what that means is that you would have that fresh amount of paperclip. If you have leftover paperclip, it's not those old school rollover minutes. It does not roll over. They just go away. So, the other piece of that is, I think Karen had asked, if they're not approaching their quota, will it be reduced? No, my goal for this is that we're gonna look at those districts that went over or really got close to see maybe why and kind of drill down. And then looking across the board, like what the numbers were. And then there is a formula. So, and it's like, I want to say it's like 2.5, do not quote me on this. It's like 2.5 like megabytes, or I don't even know what, millibytes or some kind of byte. So it's some of those, and then per student. So we'll look at your child count, but then lessons learned from this year, right? Like, so DJJ, I said, oh, I need to give them more because even though their child count might have been, and I do not know what their numbers are, 200, right? So let's just say that, but they don't have that same number all year long because it's ins and outs and ins and outs. And so looking at those little pieces to make sure that we're not having people running out and being more proactive and looking at that. So I think there was another question about Medicaid and how that looks. Did you answer that, Nick?
Yeah, I think this will be a case for a lot of folks on the call. If you have questions about how add-on contracts overlap with the number you see, reach out to your PCG add-on contact person. They'll be able to clarify how much came from your add-on contract, and we can clarify how much came from the state. But if you start with your add-on contact, that would be best.
Yeah, and we were seeing some, some districts at the beginning there, they were kind of like doing that batch printing from Enrich and then kind of carrying that over. And so that batch printing from Enrich, some of those documents are 200-300 pages. And so it was eating through that paper clip. But if you're just doing that normal, typical everyday stuff, it really shouldn't. And so we're going to look at all of that before we do the allocations. So I hope that helped clarify a little bit how that paperclip part works. But if you see your quota getting high, if you'll let me know before, and like I said, Monday, I'll be reaching out after I get the report from PCG, because I would rather be proactive and say, hey, I'm going to add some, we need to look at this, versus users not being able to upload when you've hit that 100%. And so, Nick, we're going to talk about end of year procedures, and this isn't everything for end of year procedures. We wanted to kind of start talking and setting the tone for what's coming, but there'll be more information that's more detailed about end of year procedures. This is just kind of what we're looking at now and what we have in place or what we know already.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Katie. And I'm gonna have you keep sharing. So can you go to the calendar to start? So what we're going to talk about here will be things that you'll be doing inside of EdPlan. This discussion will not yet be about how PowerSchool and the rollover of that will interact with EdPlan over the summer. That's something we'll be discussing at our May office hour. So this day will focus just on inside of EdPlan actions, whereas our next meeting will discuss how other things impact the rollover of this system in the summer. First, I will have Anne scroll down and click on the Edit School Years button. So most of the time when we come in here, this is to edit reporting periods. But another element of this that relates to year-end rollover are the school year begin and end dates. So this is something that will be imported from PowerSchool or is currently planned to for your system, meaning that this would auto-populate on the first day. So you would not have to set the beginning and end date of your school year, but it will only be imported one time. So for the first time you turn on the system in the new school year, you'll have a date set. And if that date is not correct, or if you'd like to modify it, you can change it and it won't be overlapped or overwritten by the upload. So this is one of our start of year one-time uploads. After that, users can make modifications. And then I'm gonna have Anne probably go out to 2027, 2028, and just to be safe. And can you click on the edit reporting periods button? I think this will look like we'd expect. Okay. So with the change earlier I talked about where we're not importing reporting periods, this is what you'd see when the system turns on for a new school year. So when 25-26 starts, using July 1st as the date, as Katie said, I don't know if that's a Monday or a Saturday, but imagining it's July 1st, your school year would have blank reporting periods. And then you'd be able to come in and click add another reporting period. And now you have that reporting period set and it's totally under the control of the district. So you could name that Q1, put your begin and end dates, do whatever you need, and then set it by updating the database. Because we are not importing these at the school level, that means as soon as Anne presses update the database, she's going to automatically get that push to all of her other schools. At the start of this year, we had already imported reporting periods for all of your schools. So the changes at the district did not automatically update the school. The change for next year is we're going to start with a blank slate, and every change made at the district level will go down to the school level unless you choose to make it custom. To start this year, it was the opposite. Everyone started with custom dates unless you reverted them. Let's see if we have any questions on that. And Katie says July 1st is a Tuesday. Okay, there we go.
So things will happen on July 1st.
Things probably will happen on July 1st. Karen, good question. If we do this now before the end of this year, will it be erased if info is imported from PowerSchool? No. So if you want to set your 25-26 reporting periods, you can do that. It will not be overwritten.
Just remember, you only want to put the end date in, not the begin date and the due date. That's correct, Nick. Well, I said.
Yeah, good point. I guess discussing that too. So the end date prints on the progress report card. It will say Q2 end date 9/5/2027. But if Anne also adds a beginning date, that's where the really close error checks start. So Anne, can you put September 3rd, 2027? Let's pretend this is a 2-day period. So if a student had a goal that began on September 2nd, which is before the begin date, that's where we got all those difficulties we'd be working through with you on Zendesk when the report card wouldn't print right. But if Anne just does not set a begin date in there, the end date will still print on the document and we won't have those same error check difficulties. Okay.
All right, so that was for end of year procedures. We had report periods, calendar dates, and PowerSchool. Do we hit everything that those pieces I think we did?
I think we did, yeah, with the caveat that our extensive PowerSchool discussion, like what does rollover look like? How will that impact the students coming into your system? That is a May item.
Yes, we are
But at
just
least
building
I think
that
so.
foundation right now. And there is a question from Laura. If I have begin and end dates on my progress periods now and ed plan for this year, should I go in and delete those begin dates now?
I would recommend leaving them as is, Laura. I think you could, but that might introduce, just a change in April. If that's something you want to experiment with in your district, you can, but starting next year, the recommendation will be to not include those.
All right, and so another exciting agenda item, advanced reporting. So Nick's going to take us through that, looking at how to navigate to shared reports, modifying and saving a report, but also there is a new report. One of the districts had reached out, and so we were able to get that report done pretty quickly, and it was documenting documents that are in draft. So if there's a document that's still in draft, there's a report now for that. And so Nick's going to walk us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. All right, I'm gonna have to do a bit of screen gymnastics when I'm showing this demo to make sure I'm only showing you test data. So every once in a while, you'll see me drop my screen and it'll look like I'm doing a little magic. That's just to make sure I'm not showing statewide data on the screen. So I'll have to take a few extra steps. You won't, but I'll explain what those extra steps are. So the first thing we're showing is going to be that new report Katie mentioned. And I'm inside of AR. And then once you're inside of AR, you can click on this SCDE state reports folder within public. These are those reports that are shared out by the state agency. And once you're in there, you click on this. This will say your district name. Because of the place I'm in, it looks a little different. Then you'd want to click again on SCDE state shared reports. And then this pulls up this list of what was 4 reports, and there's now a 5th, and that is this 3rd one in line called document and draft by school. So that's what I'm going to be clicking on. The way I got here was by going into AR, clicking on public folders, SCDE state reports, SCDE state shared reports. Then I will click on document and draft by school. And what this will present to you in your district is a list just of your schools. What you're going to see here is a list of every school in the system. I am just going to go pull a test school. I'll select 1 or 2 of these, but you would select as many schools as you'd like to see in your output. And then you'd press run. So the names you'll see here might be some of your own because these are just documents from the training site. What this report shows are a couple of things. It starts with the school name in which this occurred, the student ID, the full name of the student, gender of the student, grade of the student, the case manager. There's a document ID field. This is just a unique identifier for each document in EdPlan. It'll be right next to your documents view on each student. And then most importantly, it will show the document type that's in draft and the date on which that was generated. So for this top student, Maya 2024 test, there was a draft progress report made on 3/26, but it hasn't been finalized. Or similarly, there was a draft consent to reevaluate on March 31st, but it hasn't been finalized. So this report can show you documents that are in draft by school when you go throughout the system. Any questions there? Katie, Ann, anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I think this is
Nope.
helpful.
Awesome. So then the second and the longer part of this demo, glad to see the report is a huge help. That's awesome. Is how to copy and take a report and then make your own version of it. So I'm going to use an extended metaphor here that might work or it might not work, but it's about grocery shopping and meals and how that can kind of be used to think about making AR reports from these templates. So this is where I'm going to start jumping around my screen for just a moment. But let's say you want to take one of these reports that's pre-built and you want to do something else to it. You want to add a field, you want to remove a field, you want to add case manager. You don't have to start from fresh. You can start from one of these templates and do your own customizations on it. And that's what I'm going to be showing now. So I'll choose this disability and IEP dates report. I'm going to cancel it really quick so that nothing actually runs, but I'll show you the headers. So this report, when it's pre-built, pulls this information for a student. Some identifying info, their enrollment status, if they're eligible, their disabilities, and then dates associated with that eligibility in their IEP. And I'm going to take this and I want to add to it information about if a student had an ESY deferral, will be the example I'm using today. So rather than going back and starting my own custom report, I'm going to start with this report because it's already got a lot of the structure I want. It pulls 1 row per student. It pulls their latest IEP. So now I can just layer in additional things that I want to know more about. So the first step you want to do is come up to the save icon right here underneath the SAP logo. And then save will be blanked out, which is exactly what we want because this is the public folder. This is shared among the state. No one can save into that folder. But what you can do is a save as. So when you click save as, it's going to pop up a little file explorer. And then on this left side, you're going to have all of your folders. And you're going to want to click into personal, is that's where I would always start, is in personal, because only you can see it. There's a mechanism to move that report to your whole district once that's done, but I always start inside of personal. So then I would come down here and save this as Nick modified report, whatever you might want to call it. And then I'll press save. When I do that, my screen is going to reload and it's going to look almost the exact same, but now the title of my report is Nick modified report. So now I can do stuff to this report. I can also tell that it's editable because when I come into reading mode, I can change it and now I can start to modify this report. You can't do any of that when you're inside of the state report. So I'm going to do my screen gymnastics now, but just really quickly restate what I just showed. In order to save a state report so you can edit it yourself, you go to those public report folders. And once you're looking at the report, drop down the menu and click Save As. That will allow you to save a personal copy of that report that keeps all the logic, but does not have, it's not produced by the state. Now it's yours. So I'm going to drop my screen really quickly, and I'm going to go pull up the copy of that report I saved out earlier. All right. So the reason this is a slightly different name, oh, is my screen back? That was an intentional screen drop, but I see someone said they can't see it. Can you all see my screen now?
We can see it now.
Okay, cool.
He's got to make some ninja moves to not show
Yeah.
the stuff.
Gotta do a few moves, that's right. So this report, it's not the one I just saved. The one I just saved is going to be inside my personal folder, and I called it Nick Modified Report. That's what I did just a minute ago. But in order to do this live, so I'm not showing you actual student data, I had to do this a little bit separately beforehand. But this is the report copy I just saved. So I'm now going to go in and open it up. Okay. So the reason I had to do my screen movement was to make sure you only saw these test students again. So again, the students you're seeing are just those from the test site. But this is that report that I just showed you, populated with student data. I haven't modified it yet, but it's my own report. I have my own ability to save it because now this save button's available. It's my copy. So now let's say I want to start changing what's inside of this report. I go up to the reading button because right now I can't do any editing. I can download the report. I can look at it. What I really want to do is I want to start editing it. So I'll click on reading. Once I do that, I get a few more things on my screen that looks a little more complex. But where I want to go to start adding in new stuff is inside of this little gear button next to query. It'll say edit when you hover over it. When I click on edit, this is where my metaphor starts. We'll see if it's an effective metaphor. But you can think of the left side of your screen as like a grocery store. This is everything that you are able to go out and get from the system. There's all sorts of fields in here. I'm going to talk really quickly about current workspace versus historical. But the left side is your option set, what you can possibly pick, like the ingredients for your meal. And now let's say my ingredient I want to bring into my meal that isn't in there yet is the extended school year deferral. I want to know if a student had ESY decision deferred. One of the key differences is between the current workspace and the historical information folders. The current workspace will tell you what is true on every student's profile at this moment, regardless of whether or not it's final. So if I were a case manager and I had gone to put an ESY deferral in the workspace, but I hadn't finalized it yet, and I got the ESY field out of this current workspace folder, that would tell me everything in the workspace now, but the team might not have finalized that decision yet. So we only want to look at data that is associated with a finalized IEP. So whenever that's true, you do not want to be in the current workspace folder. You want to be in the historical information folder. So this is going to pull for you what was true the last time the team finalized an IEP. If someone's editing something new, that's in the workspace, but it hasn't been finalized yet. So I'm in historical information. And I want to add another ingredient to my report. So I'm going to go over here, find extended school year. And then I happen to know where this field is. If you didn't, you could come up here and just type ESY deferral. The hard part is kind of knowing exactly what it's named. So I would just start by typing ESY. And that will give you everything related to ESY. So then I want to know for each student with a current IEP, did they have ESY decision deferred? And if they did, when was that deferred until? So to do that, I'm going to take the items from my grocery store on the left and I'm going to put them in my cart. So now that they're over here in my cart, they are ready for me to take home and add to my meal, but I don't have them yet. So then I'm going to press the button run. And this is like checking out at the grocery store, packing up your car and coming back home. And now I think one of the most confusing things of AR is I've just pressed run and I come to look at my report and I expect to see ESY info, but it's not there yet. That's because you need to do the final step, which is to take that grocery you got and drove home, and you need to put it in the recipe. So to put it in the recipe, you will notice ESY showed up on the right side. Before I just did that step, there was nothing about ESY in this report. But now I've got the 2 ESY fields in my ingredients list. So if I want to add them to my recipe, I drag them over here and I get this little yellow, it's probably very hard to see, but right next to IEP end date, I have a little yellow highlight and I'll drop it in. The page will reload, table will expand, and now you'll see if a student had a deferral date on their last finalized IEP, there's that deferral date. And then if I want to know about what the decision was, I probably should have added that one first. I will go over to my ingredients list, grab the ESY determination, do the same thing. And now you can see a yes. So yes, this student had ESY, deferred, and that date was deferred until September 30th. I am now going to look back and see if my metaphor completely failed or if it maybe didn't fail before I talk about saving and finishing this report so you can keep it for your own. Katie, Ann, anything in the chat? I cannot see it.
Yeah, so Laura asked if we can put this report in the public folder because they actually do need it, which is why we used it as an example today. So Sarah Love from Erskine had mentioned that she needed this and just emailed at the right time. I was talking to Nick and he said, I will use that as the example today. So, but then also Sarah asked for the directions. So Ann is going to put together a Zendesk article. And once we have that ready, Ann, let me know and I'm going to push that out so that people aren't going back to look for it.
Mhm.
And I will see how fast I can get the recording of this. I know that AR, there's not enough time in the day to if you're doing AR. If you have someone in your district that's already created a bunch of reports for you and they're like this AR report guru, please let me know. I'm trying to avoid just 15 different districts creating reports. Lindy has provided us some reports from Ori because she's just awesome like that. And so we've been using her reports to test right now. And once those have been tested, we're going to publish those for everyone to use. And so that's my goal, is that we're not having people reinvent the wheel, but right now that's kind of where we're at with getting reports built. And so also there is a link, so that district request link where you send me what do you want changed and what do you want for office hours now does have what AR reports do you want to see. And so I'm using that to say to PCG, hey, I need this report, or getting that report built. So that helps me. I need to know what do you want to be able to run. So that's all coming.
Awesome. And then to finish the example, because I often do this myself when I'm in here working, everything I've done is not saved yet. So if I were to leave this page, I would lose all of my precious work. So you want to always make sure to finish by pressing the save button. But now when I come back to my personal folder, I have saved that root from the state that gave us some basic information about IEPs and disabilities. And then you can add anything else into it. And this idea will apply for pretty much any field associated with the IEP. So if you want to go into IEP historical or ISP, I shouldn't be speaking only about IEPs. This also works for ISPs. Any selection that's made, like if you want to know the same question, but maybe how many students had behavior needs of yes on their report or on their IEP. You take behavior needs from the grocery store to the cart, you check out, and then the trickiest and easiest to forget and the most frustrating is you got to add it to the recipe. And that's your final step. So now for our students with finalized IEPs, you see their indications on behavior needs. This is the training site, so you're seeing a lot of gaps, a lot of empty rows, but on a normal site, you'd see more structured data. All right. I think that's all I got. I see we have 1 minute, so I think that was well timed.
And Nick, I don't know if we really truly answered their question about this being on the shared folder. I think it has to be ran through testing before we could do that, right? Is that?
Yeah, I think middle of next week, we should hopefully have this in the public folder. We just have to do our due diligence to make sure it shows what we say it's showing. So
And Nick, as soon as that's ready, if you'll let me know, and then I'll push that out as well.
you got it.
Through an email. Again, so people aren't just going back to the folder or going back to Zendesk to see if those things are done. And we are at time. I told you it was a jam-packed but fun agenda. Does anybody have any really quick questions? If not, I will get this recording out as soon as possible and update you when I have all of the information about the report being finished and the article in Zendesk. We appreciate everyone's time, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you.